Power, politics, and one bold woman. Today we're diving into the story of Abigail, who married King David, who already had a wife. My guest for this episode is Dr. Robert Chisholm. I'm happy to have today in the studio Dr. Robert Chisholm, Bob Chisholm, Dr. Bob. Dr. Chisholm, to me, he was my Hebrew professor, and I took you for every Hebrew class because you're the hardest prof. But I wanted a good education. But also, you're kind of a stand-up comic. It's true. So, yeah. So before we dive into our text today, which is going to be Abigail and David and 1 Samuel 25, I would love for our listeners, viewers, to know, how did you end up, you're from New York, but you live in Texas. And also, you came to Texas by way of training to be a sports journalist?
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Well, I went to Syracuse University, and I graduated from the Newhouse School of Public Communications. I wanted to be, which is a journalism school.
A good journalism school.
Yes, I think the best in the country, but it's
Mizzou might fight, but
yeah, or Northwestern, Columbia, that's right. But we're definitely first when it comes to broadcasters.
Okay, and that's what you wanted
to
do?
No, I wanted to be a sports writer.
Oh, okay.
And so I took all the journalism classes, but I had a spiritual awakening after my sophomore year, and I just had this desire to study the Bible. And I think what was happening, I was internalizing my faith, because when you're at a university at that age, there's a challenge. Why do I believe? Because there's so many people around you, including professors, who don't believe.
Right. And want you to unbelieve.
Yeah. And so why do I believe? Just because my parents dragged me to church all the time?
Did they?
Yeah.
So you were in a church
They
going
came
home?
to Christ when they were in their 30s.
Oh,
and
wow,
they were,
interesting.
from that day forward,
All
they were
in.
sold out, all in, yes.
Okay.
So we were in church all the time.
Okay.
And so I went through that process, and I was actually doing an interview. It was senior year, spring, and I did an interview with a man from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and job interview. And before the interview was over, I was sharing the gospel with him. And so he said to me, "Young man, when you get as much zeal for news writing as you have for your faith, you come see me." Which I think was his way of saying, "I'm not hiring you.
Not hiring you.
But I like your zeal." And it was also the Lord saying to me through him, "You need to go to seminary," because I was wrestling with seminary or pursuing my degree and getting into journalism. And so... Yeah.
And you still love sports?
Yeah, I don't follow it as much as I used to. Okay. I'm all in on hockey. I follow hockey. The Detroit Red Wings are my favorite team, and I follow them very closely, as well as their farm clubs and prospects and everything else. But I don't follow the others as much as I used to.
Okay. Well, there were lots of baseball analogies in Hebrew classes.
I am a baseball historian. Yeah, I can tell you who won the World Series any given year. 1943, Yankees beat the Cardinals in 5 games.
Oh, my goodness.
1936, Yankees beat the Giants in 6 games. I mean, I know all that. Yeah.
I should say so.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Now, so let's take that love for details and the precision. Right. Why then the Hebrew Bible?
Well, so I went to Grace Seminary to get in Indiana, where I met my wife, and we were married within 1 year after I met her. And so I'm having to take Hebrew, and I was terrified because I didn't think I could do it. I hadn't done much with languages. I'd taken some French in high school. At Syracuse, we were dual majors, so we didn't have to take a language. Others would, but we had so much to do. So I decided to take Hebrew, and
so that's your first language course ever?
Well, French, but I barely passed. Yeah, I did study Greek on my own, and I passed a test, so I didn't have to take first year Greek.
Wow!
But Hebrew, right to left, it was strange.
No recognizable letters.
I had an excellent teacher. His name was James Battenfield. He passed away just a few months ago. And I just did really well. It was Bible. I was motivated.
Yeah.
And so I started to study Hebrew, and I was just getting hundreds on everything. And he calls me into his office, and he says, "Have you thought about pursuing Old Testament studies as an academic career?" He says, "God has given you an ability in this." And he said, "I'd like you to become my teaching assistant."
I have never heard this story.
Yeah, so I'd like you to become my teaching assistant. And so I agreed, and he would divide the class up, and I would take half of them and drill them on parsing and translation and all that. So I really learned a lot. And then he'd bring the class back together, and he'd lecture, and then next class we'd flip the students, so they got him for half the time. And he just encouraged me to pursue this, and once I got into it, I'd always loved the stories of the Old Testament, and I loved history, which was
And
one
you're
of
a
my...
storyteller.
I tell my grandson's stories every Friday night and make them up as I go, Sandy. I pull from here and there, Star Trek stuff, and
Star
make
Trek,
these
Wars,
stories up.
And
now I'm at the point where I have kind of a spiritual dimension to it. So I like story, narrative, studying narratives. So the Lord just kind of led
you
me
also
along
had that journalism training, because you've done a lot of publishing. Like, there are a gazillion Chisholm commentaries out there, which I have a bunch of them on my walls. I mean, they're good stuff.
So thank you.
So when did you start publishing?
Well, I was very busy teaching, but just trying to stay ahead of the curve, when you're teaching here. And then Don Glenn, my mentor and our department chair, he encouraged me to write. And so I wrote some book reviews and articles in the 80s, and then Stan Gundry showed up at my door.
Zondervan.
Zondervan, and one day, and he said, "Don Glenn sent me over here. I want this book written, Interpreting the Minor Prophets," and he said, "You're the man to do it." I said, "Okay." And so,
So you had some good mentors.
And then I started to publish articles and books, and it just sort of snowballs from there. So
what's the latest one you're working on right now?
Right now, I need to do the final edits on a commentary on 1st and 2nd Samuel for Zondervan.
And we're going to be in 1 Samuel
the Zondervan
today.
exegetical commentary in the Old Testament. I think it's about 800 pages. They're doing 1st and 2nd Samuel together.
In one book?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty big.
Very big.
I don't know why they chose to do it that way, but they did. And so I'll be kind of making some edits and revisions over the break on that. And then Isaiah 1-39 just came out with Kriegel. And so I need to finish 40 through 66. And I told them that I could finish it by the end of next year. If you do a verse a day, you get done ahead of time. Then you got to write the introduction. So I need to get that finished. That's going to be about 500-600 pages. But I've got a lot of notes on that over the years, and so a lot of it is just transferring my notes into the commentary. But that's kind of what I do.
So let's dig into a text.
All right.
We're going to look at the story of David and Abigail, 1 Samuel 25. And I have to begin by telling you two things that I was taught that were a little twisted about this text. One was that Abigail shows us that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Actually, let's just stop there. Yeah. That, I'm guessing from the look on your face, is not what you think the takeaway should be.
That's an interesting,
I know.
Interesting interpretation.
So let's come away with a little healthier view of Abigail. But the other one was from Bill Gothard. So I was sort of steeped in Bill Gothard before. I didn't even think women should go to seminary, let alone teach at one. So there's been a little bit of a character arc for me on that journey.
Yes, sounds like it.
But Bill Gothard says Abigail was wrong, because she is the heart of her husband should be able to trust in her, and she goes against what her husband says. All right. So,
well, I don't agree with that either.
So, So let's talk about what we do agree with. First of all, let's talk about the setting. So we're in 1 Samuel 25. What is Samuel? Samuel's the writer, we assume?
Maybe. We don't really know who wrote, the former prophets. I think there was probably some inspired editing that occurred because Joshua through Kings in the Hebrew Bible, you start with Joshua and you end in exile. So I think that
it's
there one big story that grew up. Prophets, maybe Samuel early on, but not here because he's dead.
So, but exactly. But
he died in verse 1.
So there's a narrator who is making argument Yes.
Well, there's a larger argument that's going on in Samuel where he's trying to demonstrate that David is indeed the chosen
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
They sometimes call it an apology for David.
Yeah.
Not an apology in the
Yeah,
sense
yeah,
that
sure.
he did something,
But like
a
apologetics.
defense
Yeah, yeah.
of David as the legitimate king as opposed to the house of Saul. And you can see in Samuel, there was a lot of opposition to the idea that David would be king, especially from the tribe of Benjamin. So it contributes to that overall theme. But in my Zcot commentary that's coming out, I'm seeing the big theme of Samuel as God's provision for his people. They wanted a more of a theological understanding of the book. And I think what we see throughout the history of Israel is God makes provision for his people and their needs despite their sin. And, of course, the Davidic king is an important figure in that, but I call it backdoor messianism. You realize that none of these historical kings, by the time you get to the end of Kings, are really going to satisfy the promise.
So we're still looking for Jesus because we want a better king in the end.
And Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment. But in this section, Saul is trying to kill David.
Yeah.
But
isn't David in Saul territory physically?
Well,
like where's
Saul's capital is up in Gibeah, which is north of Jerusalem. But David is down in Judea, where he is from.
Okay.
You know, he's from Bethlehem. His tribe is Judah. And so he's way down south, south of Hebron. He's over by En-Gedi, near the Dead Sea. He's moving around down there, trying to dodge Saul. In chapter 23, Saul almost gets him. David is getting trapped, and then the messenger comes and says, the Philistines are attacking. You need to get back.
Run.
So God delivers him. And then, of course, in chapter 24, Saul's after him. And this is where Saul's close. And remember, David and his men, they go in the cave.
And David spares his life.
And David comes in. Saul comes in to relieve himself. Oh, my grandsons love it when I tell this story. They go, ooh. So
bathroom humor.
Yeah, right. Bathroom humor. Little boys, they really get into it. And so that's where David cuts off the piece of the garment and then comes out and engages Saul. And Saul admits David is in the right, and he wants him to come back to the royal court, and he all but promises him he won't do anything to him. But in chapter 26, after 25, 26, we're right back at it. Saul's out there trying to kill David, and that's when David goes into the camp with Abishai, and the spear is right there. The spear that probably was thrown at him a couple of times. And so he has the opportunity to kill Saul, but once again, he just takes some things and then engages Saul. And once again, Saul admits that David is in the right, and he's the chosen one, and he's going to be king. So David is waiting on God's timing in 24 and 26 because his men are encouraging him to kill Saul. And they're even arguing, God has given you this opportunity. Can't you see it? You need to seize what God has given to you. And David is not going to do that. He's going to wait for God to directly take Saul out. He's not going to be a part of that. And tucked right in the middle, between 24 and 26, is this chapter. And it's also part of this, how is David going to deal with the promise in relation to Saul? Because some scholars recently have made a case for this, and one of my former students did his dissertation at Edinburgh, I think, and argued this way, is that Nabal is, he's probably in with Saul. He's a chief who has a political agreement with Saul. He's one of Saul's men. Yeah. So
Abigail's married to Team Saul.
He's right. That's good. Yeah. And so there's a sense in which he is kind of in Saul territory, in that one of Saul's loyal guys is down there, because when they start to engage, and I don't know if you want me to get into it.
Keep going for it.
Okay. When David sends his men to Nabal and explains, we've taken care of your shepherds. Could you reward us for that? He goes off and he says, many are breaking away from their masters. Who are you? And he calls him, the son of Jesse, which is what Saul calls David, and Doeg the Edomite. It's a derogatory term. And so that's one of the arguments.
Because his son is the son of the king.
Yeah, right. So he's the son of Jesse.
Who's Jesse.
And Nabal refers to David that way. Saying that suggests that he's viewing things through Saul's eyes because he's in league with him.
Okay.
And so I think that David is facing off here with one of Saul's guys, who's basically calling David a rebel. But Abigail has a different take on it.
She does.
Because when she talks to David, she is very much aware of who David is. He is the one who has been delivering Israel. Back in chapter 23, David delivered the town of Keilah. We usually pronounce it Keilah, and when we read the text, in Hebrew it's Keilah. He delivered that town from the Philistines, and so that's down that way. So she's very much aware that David has been God's instrument. Yes, and Goliath. People know who he is, but
Goliath,
Nabal, he acts like he doesn't even know who David is. Yeah, but Abigail knows, and she knows David's destiny. She knows that he is called to be king, and so she really makes an excellent argument. You don't want to do this, and I think there's a dimension to it that people don't recognize is because you're trying not to take Saul out on your own. But if you attack one of Saul's loyal guys down here, that could be viewed as an attack on Saul. So you really don't want to do this. Plus, it would be murder. We could get into the whole honor shame thing, which is definitely driving.
This is what Abigail is saying.
Yeah,
to him.
She's saying this to David. She constructs a very strong argument for, and when you get into the middle verses of the chapter. And she's making the point that you're going to compromise your kingship if you go ahead and do this. And so that's how chapter 25 is consistent with 24 and 26.
Gotcha.
In 24 and 26, Saul's right there, and David is not going to touch him. But what about somebody who's in league with Saul?
Gotcha.
How are you gonna handle him?
Okay, so let's back up.
All right. Okay, I got ahead of it.
No. This is great. This is good storytelling.
Okay, good.
Nabal is her husband, and his name means.
Well, when you read it as a reader who knows Hebrew, I'm going to say Nabal, fool, and she's going to make that point. She's going to play off that. I don't think his mother gave him the name fool.
Yeah.
In Hebrew, you have a lot of homonyms, and so you can have the root NBL. And it can mean different things. Like there's a Nabal, which is like a skin jar or something like that. There's an Arabic cognate to this Hebrew root that means noble.
Oh, interesting.
Noble or adept. And so I think that's probably what his mother had in mind. But when she's making her argument, she needs to let David know, I'm on your side. I recognize you as the future king of Israel, and I'm on your side. And she basically, she even refers to Saul. A man is after you. That's Saul. She's aware of what's going on, and she blesses David, and she said, may all your enemies be destroyed. So she is sending all kinds of signals. I am a loyal follower of David, despite what my husband may be. And this would be my response to Bill Gothard or someone like that who was making that argument that you always got to obey your husband. I don't think so. In this case, remember, Nabal accused David of breaking away, rebelling against his master. But when she comes before David, she basically asks for forgiveness for her avon, her sin. She identifies. She takes ownership for what the family's doing, although she does say, I didn't know anything about this.
Gotcha. But my people did it.
If ignorance is an excuse. Yeah, but she's willing, and then she uses another word, pesha, and pesha is a word for sin that refers to rebellion. And so ironically, David got accused of being a rebel by Nabal, but she's saying we're the rebels.
Real rebels.
We have rebelled in the way we've treated you. We have rebelled against the real king of Israel. And from that, it's kind of like this principle that we ought to obey God rather than men. Nabal is an enemy of God's chosen king. That makes him an enemy of God himself. And a word is used in the story that's only used for 3 other characters in all the former prophets. And it's like God's arch enemy, Goliath is one.
Wow.
And so
You don't want to be that.
Nabal's part of that little group. And so I think she's doing the right thing. I'm on God's side, I'm on David's side, and my husband is an enemy, and I'm going to do what I need to do to help David.
Interesting. Then you feel like the narrator's making it really clear we're supposed to see her positively and Nabal is negatively, no question. Right?
Totally negatively. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
positively, yeah. Nabal negatively. And you see that right up front. I mean, and then she says, his character is just like his name.
Gotcha.
And so she uses the homonym for fool. But right up front, she is a wise woman. She's tovat sekel in Hebrew. She is good of discernment, and she's also beautiful. She's physically beautiful. He is kasha. He's hard. He's harsh. He's a harsh man, and he's evil of deeds. His deeds are evil. And so you don't have to guess on this story. Right up front, he is clearly an evil person. Yeah, and I think that you're supposed to see Abigail as the embodiment of Lady Wisdom from the Proverbs. And so what we have here is David, who has resisted the temptation to kill Saul. Now he's in a situation which heavily honor-shame laden, and he's very angry. And he feels that he's been insulted, and he has the right to wipe this man out and his whole house. It's going to be corporate. He's going to kill all the men. Everyone who waters a wall is the way the Hebrew says it, and that's referring to the way one urinates. And so we're talking about the men. He's not threatening to kill the women, but the men.
That would include then the servant who came to Abigail and told him.
Everybody in the house
But not
is
necessarily Abigail. She's not necessarily going to die because she doesn't pee against a wall, basically.
I don't think David would have killed her, but she does say, in one place, she says something that leads you to believe that harm would have come to her, but that may just be, what is a woman going to do when all the men are dead?
So, let's pause there for a second. She doesn't inherit from her husband if he gets killed.
Well, we don't know. We don't know for sure, but she's, I doubt she would. Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, if he goes down and I plot with David, I inherit all this stuff.
Naomi had the right to the purchase right to the land. She had a right to sell the land to someone, but I'm not sure that she would have actually owned the land that Elimelech had left behind. But so I think what's happening here, she's doing the wise thing. Just like Yael, when Sisera in Judges 4 comes to her tent, she realizes Sisera is an ally of Yael. Of
the enemy,
her husband, Heber. And Yael realizes he's a loser. He's all muddy. He's tired.
Here comes the tent peg.
And the Israelites are coming.
Yeah.
I need to communicate that I'm on the side of the winner here. And so she, despite the contract her husband has with Sisera and the Canaanites, she takes the Canaanite out.
Yeah. Yes, she does.
Yeah. And there are women in Israelite culture who are wise, the wise woman of Tekoa.
Do you think that's like a kind of an office in a city? Like
it might be.
The wise woman?
Yeah. And in 2 Samuel 20, when Sheva, who's rebelled against David, is running away, remember he goes to that town Abigail way up north. And, And,
she's like,
Joab is there. And
what do you want?
And she says, why are you attacking a town that's known for its peace and its wisdom? And he goes, I want one guy. And so she goes back, talks to the town leaders, and his head comes flying over the wall. And Joab says, that's all I needed. More
she's
power
called
to
a
you.
wise woman,
She's a wise woman.
Right. Yeah.
And she is the negotiator there.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily, it could be just a modifier. A wise woman, but could also actually be.
She does the negotiating. They turn to her because apparently she's good at these kind of deals, and remember that's what he does with the wise woman of Tekoa when he's trying to convince David to bring Absalom back. So women have this function.
Interesting.
And so I think you're supposed to read the story against the background of the wisdom literature that David is listening to the voice of wisdom. And she is,
And it probably saves his
reining
life.
him in,
Okay.
yeah, because what he was going to do was excessive.
Should we be seeing subtext here? Yes, he's God's chosen, but also he's a hothead, or not necessarily?
I think you've read my article, Cracks in the Foundation, where I try to show that right from the beginning in 1 Samuel 16, there are some things about David that
Should
make you
trouble us.
wonder. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in 17, he comes to the battlefield. He hears Goliath, and he's really upset. His anger is coming through. This guy needs to die. He's blasphemed God. And by the way, what's Saul paying for this one? He really, what's in it?
Yeah.
And,
There's a daughter in it
yeah,
for me.
yeah,
Okay,
right.
gotcha.
Yeah, and tax-exempt status for the
Yeah,
family
yeah.
and all that. So,
Okay.
yeah, and a lot of writers have
Okay.
noticed this, and you see it.
Interesting.
You see it throughout the story. So when you get to 2 Samuel 11, this isn't just one big bad day that David had.
Gotcha.
He's got, like all of us, he's
Yeah.
got some character issues, there, places where his strengths could become weaknesses, and he could compromise his character. Because the Lord does say he's a man after God's own heart, which I think means he's the one that God has chosen. But
Yeah,
God is
talk
going to
to-
choose one who has character traits that reflect his own character. So
Yeah, talk
David
about
has
that
some,
a minute, because it seems like we hear David's a man after God's own heart, and that is the grid through which we see everything that David does, and we give him a pass on some stuff.
we shouldn't do that.
Okay.
Yeah, David is
what does it
David is
mean?
flawed. So yeah, God says when I chose Saul, I chose the kind of the one asked for. This is the kind you
Right.
wanted a king
Tall,
like
he's good looking.
Yeah, right. He's the guy you would think would be king of this nation. But this time I'm looking at the inside. I'm looking at the heart, and I've chosen one whose heart I like, who's in line with my will. And so we know that David has this inclination toward God. This is a positive thing. But that doesn't mean that everything he does needs to be somehow viewed as this has to reflect David having a heart for God. No, we read the story, and it sets us up for the tragic dimension of the story. How sad that a person who had a heart for God failed in a variety of ways. And so it's like in the Jacob story. He's called Tom. He's called perfect. And people say, no, he's anything but as the story unfolds. So Tom can't mean what it normally means, honest and all that.
Yeah.
It's got to mean domesticated or something in contrast to the hunter Esau.
Yeah. I've read that.
No, yeah,
you don't think so?
I think
Okay.
up front, I think Jacob he's basically an honest guy who has some integrity. Even when he, does the thing with the birthright, he's pretty straightforward. He exploits Esau in a moment of weakness. He's come in and he's all tired, and he doesn't give a rip about this. So he exploits him. But then hey, Rebecca and Laban are related, and they really know how to deceive. And so Rebecca, kind of helps him see we gotta steal the paternal blessing, and so he starts to become a deceiver. But I think that just when it calls him an honest man, that's setting you up for the tragic dimension of the story. You've got to look at what he does. You can't be filtering it through. Everything has got to be explained as him being honest in some way. No. And so David does a lot of things that don't reflect his inclination toward God.
Do you see that then when the text ends with saying David takes Abigail as his wife, he takes another wife? Like it feels like it's a happy ending, but also
Well, yeah, a lot of stories. There's ambiguity.
Yeah.
And you're trying to disambiguate the thing, and so there's the positive side is he marries the embodiment of wisdom.
Yeah.
She is going to be a good influence for him. This is a good match. At the same time, he's polygamous. He's already has this other wife, and Michal has been given away by her father Saul, and so he's adding another wife. Now, in Deuteronomy, when it talks about the king, he's not supposed to multiply wives. So what does that mean? How many wives do you have to multiply? Probably more than 2.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
we quickly see him later at 6. He's starting to look. Now, they're all local girls. I call them local girls because
Interesting.
remember, in Deuteronomy, the fear is if you intermarry with a bunch of wives and start doing these political alliances,
Like his
they're
son
gonna bring
does with the Egyptian?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to bring their gods in.
Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
you're going to be compromised. And Solomon, it happens with Solomon in spades. I mean, yeah. So
Interesting, but that doesn't happen with David.
No,
You're saying
so
he
they're
doesn't
local
ever go after
girls,
other gods.
But look at the example he's setting, the pattern he's setting, and we've already seen this. Like in Judges, Gideon starts multiplying wives, and he starts going Canaanite. And look what Abimelech in Judges 9
Meaning,
turns out to be.
my father is king.
Abimelech, my father, and his father gave him the name. My father is king, and so he
messed up.
decides I'm going to be one.
That's messed up.
And so David is setting a bad precedent here. He's starting to look like the typical ancient Near Eastern
You're talking
king
about in
that
our
Samuel
passage.
warned about in 1 Samuel 8.
So this is a tiny little crack starting
Yeah, it's a
even
crack.
this early.
Yeah, it's a crack, and then by the time we get to 2 Samuel 11, he is
full on.
power laden. He is acting like that kind of king. And because he's got all these wives now, and so it's setting the stage for what happens with Solomon. So Abigail comes along as number 2 here. She's not that prominent of a figure going
just
forward.
here,
And so
kind of a cameo.
it's kind of there's some good and there's some bad. So yeah, there's it's
David.
like these long stories. Sometimes you wrap up the plot tension, let's say in chapter 25. Okay, Nabal is taken out. This is good. This foreshadows what God's going to do to Saul. What happened to Saul's noble. And David married the voice of wisdom. So there's a positive dimension if you're looking just at the episode itself.
Yeah.
But on the larger level, makes you a little uneasy. Where is this going to head now that he's building a harem, as it were? Yeah.
You mentioned Michal, which
Yeah.
is a little off topic, but I want to go there anyway for a minute.
That's fine.
So this is one of David's wives, and he wins her. He has won her, correct?
Well,
like
Saul goes back on that deal.
Yeah.
I mean, Saul
he
doesn't
won her
give,
fair and square. but
Well,
then-
first he offers. Basically, Saul wants to make the bride price Philistine foreskins. So you're going to go out and you're going to kill Philistines and you're going to bring their foreskins back.
but he's hoping David will die.
And he's hoping
we assume,
David will
right?
die.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he first tries to marry David to Merav, who is the older sister. And David is a
Not
little
into it.
hesitant. He's hesitant about it, and so he turns that down. But then Saul finds out that Michal loves David. She really loves him. And I think it's a romantic love in that context. Everybody loves David in the context. The love can have different nuances, but with her, she's attracted to him and she loves him. And when he finds that out, he gets his servants working on David, and you can join the royal court. And David, we read his thoughts for the first time, and
Which is kind of unusual in Hebrew.
yeah, the
literature, right?
narrator. Well, as Sternberg says, Mayor Sternberg, the narrator's omniscient.
Yeah.
And of course, our view on that is, because God is the ultimate author here, and he's informing the human authors of certain truths. And David says to himself, it would be a good thing to be the king's,
Yes, it would be a
king's
good
son.
thing to be
Yeah,
the
it's
son.
not, it'd be a good thing to be married to Michal, but he's thinking in terms,
Gotcha.
this gets me a step closer toward my
Ooh.
destiny, which he
Okay.
knows is the 1 Samuel 16. He's getting closer to the royal court. And he probably justified it in the sense that God is providentially moving me toward my destiny.
Gotcha.
So
Even if she's expendable.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
So he gets the woman.
gets
He's
Michal.
married to her, and then Saul dissolves that.
No, well,
later?
first, Michal still loves David.
Right.
It didn't work. He brought 200 foreskins back. David's a
That's
good
right. Yeah,
warrior.
yeah, yeah.
His
He
guys
is a
are,
good-
And so, remember, Saul decides he wants to kill David, and so he sends these people down to arrest David and bring him back, and I think he's going to execute him.
Yeah.
And Michal saves his life. She now they have a teraphim in the house. That's a household idol. And by the way, a
concerning.
lot of people call her an idolater. Well, it's David's house.
Oh,
if
that's
there's a
interesting.
teraphim in the house, there's so many gaps in the story.
Huh.
A lot of people just say it's an incidental thing because these household idols must have been big enough for her to do what she wanted to do with them. And in this case, and so she makes it look like David's lying there. Well, Saul's not buying it. No, you go down and get him. And so she gets David to go out the window. And remember, then she lies because Saul
She
said,
covers for
why
him.
did you deceive me? And she said, well, he threatened me. He threatened me. And there's a really good book by Matthew Newkirk on deceit in Samuel. And he doesn't see Michal as being wrong at all. He says sometimes deceit is wrong, sometimes it's neutral, and sometimes it's
saving
positive.
her husband's
Saul's
life.
trying to
Okay.
kill somebody.
Yeah.
And so,
It's like hiding somebody from the Nazis, right? Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So then David is away, and at some point he gives Michal away.
Dad dissolves that marriage
Right.
and gives her to
to
somebody else.
Paltiel.
And then David comes back later and claims
After
his,
Saul is dead, now he's acting very politically, and he agrees. Abner is trying to get him on the throne and end the line of Saul in that regard. And so David says, "Well, I'll do it, but I got to have Michal back." And
you think that's completely for
and
political
it's very,
reasons?
very sad. He takes her,
yeah.
and it's a foreshadowing of his power, how power is getting
Gotcha.
to him. He wants to be able to say, "Remember that I was in Saul's royal court, and I have a connection to kingship already." And so I think it's a political move, and he may have legally. There's a big debate over whether he had the legal right to do it. Now, Ishbosheth agreed to it, but that may be because he was so afraid of him
Right.
at that point.
Yeah.
So whether he, even if he had the right, sometimes you
cruel.
can do something. That
yeah.
doesn't mean you should do something. And the author goes out of his way to describe this poor guy,
Pathetic,
Paltiel,
yeah.
weeping as he goes behind this woman he loves.
Yeah.
And so
then
I tend to
David
see
never knows again, right? Like she and David are never intimate again.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, then the next episode is in 2 Samuel 6 where things are real ambiguous because David didn't bring the ark back properly and paid the price. Now he finally does bring it back properly, and he's dancing and singing and rejoicing and kind of, in their culture, publicly exposing himself. She sees that, and the way she criticizes him, it sounds like she's saying, that's not very king-like. You're not acting properly for a king. And then he reminds her that God chose me, not your father. And so they have a disagreement there. And I think people tend to criticize Michal because the text could be read as she didn't have a child. It's probably a boy. It's a male that
Gotcha.
and it's.
Yeah, for years I read that as God struck her as infertile for criticizing
I don't think
David.
the
and I
text
don't see
goes
it that
that
way
far.
anymore,
You
yeah.
could argue that way.
But
It's
it could
possible.
also be David never summoned her again.
She didn't
Done
have
with
an
you.
opportunity. I'm done with
Yeah.
you. Yeah, because I don't know
Which
if
is
he ever loved her.
Doubly cruel.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of ambiguity, and it seems to me like there's blame on both sides in that. But I really can understand why Michal was upset with him.
Crazy about everything.
Yeah,
he was
once he
doing, yeah.
brought her back and forced her to come back like that, her behavior is very easy to explain. Doesn't mean it's justifiable.
Sure.
But
it's
so I'm still torn
understandable.
on that. But what I did in my upcoming commentary is I tried to be fair to both sides, and so I think there's some things that maybe she went over the line, and definitely him as well. So it's just an unfortunate,
Messy.
story there.
But pulling the camera back, we see David is God's chosen, but he's not an ideal king.
He's not perfect.
There is only one ideal king.
That's right. Yeah.
So do you think that's the takeaway? Do you think that's what the narrator was
Well,
going for?
if you want to, the first article in a DTS doctrinal statement says that interpretation needs to ultimately lead to Jesus. I agree with that. I don't think that gives us the right to allegorize things crazy all over the place. But yeah,
So-
there's a messianic dimension to this story. God provides for his people. And in history, these kings were his provision, but they had their flaws
Yeah.
and failed in many respects. And so it points us toward the ideal king to come, especially when the Davidic covenant comes along in 2 Samuel 7, and God is making some big promises to the line of David. And then the writing prophets are envisioning this ideal king who's going to come. So there's a messianic dimension that's developing in the Old Testament in this context. So that's one takeaway. So there's another takeaway from the story, and it's a little more practical. I think what we see in David is he's willing to wait for God's timing in terms of he's been given the kingship, and he's had to wait a long time. And in chapter 24, he doesn't take Saul out. He doesn't take him out in chapter 26. And in this chapter, he just waits for God's timing. In this case, God delivers pretty quickly. Nabal has a stroke, and 10 days later,
Bye-bye.
he dies. Yeah. And David just praise the Lord. And
I'd have to kill him myself.
Right. So,
Amazing.
but with Saul, it's going to take a little longer. And so I think patience in waiting for God's promise to fully materialize. And I think we're all living in the fallen world. We experience the realities of the fallen world. Many, many times it seems as if God is not around. Did David ever have any doubts when Saul was chasing him around? I'm the king.
Yeah.
Is God really going to deliver on this?
He had to have wondered.
If so, when?
Why am I living in a cave? Yeah.
Right. And so I think sometimes in our lives we go through experiences like that where God doesn't really seem to be present. And why am I having to go through all of this? I'm waiting for God's promise to materialize. And so I think there's a lesson about patience and faith.
Good word. Good word.
And God's sovereignty. God accomplishes his purposes in his own timing. And we just have to.
It's interesting the contrast
that.
between how fast Nabal gets taken out and how slowly Saul gets taken out within the same sort of same narrative. All right.
Right.
Changing the subject, lightning round as we finish.
Oh, okay. Lightning round.
Footnotes or endnotes? Footnotes or endnotes?
I like for publishing purposes.
Or for reading.
I like the method that a lot of publishers are using now, where if I'm just quoting a source, his name goes in, like Chisholm 15, right in the text in parentheses. But we need to have content notes as well, and so I like footnotes.
Because they're right there.
But I like the method, and you can do the same thing in the footnotes. You can say Chisholm 15. I don't think you need all the bibliographical material, because if you've got a bibliography, you can get that. And if you got sources from more than one person, you just put the date in there, or A, B, or something like that. You know the method. That's that's what I prefer. It cuts the page number down. It really does.
And gives you the essential information. Who said it?
Yeah, and in the Trabian model, okay, what happens when you're 5 pages later, you have the second reference to the one that you gave the full material for? Have you ever gone hunting back through the footnote?
Yes.
Where was the first reference?
Ibid,
It's a lot easier just to go to the bibliography, which you can have as a separate document over here these days. So,
Dr. Chisholm, the scholar. Do you prefer Kindle or audiobook? Or
I don't do either.
Neither. Okay.
I don't do either. I like to read.
Yeah.
But I've done a little bit of audio with my wife when we're traveling. We like murder mysteries, and so sometimes we'll put a Sherlock Holmes on and listen to it.
Okay. Story makes the time go by. Writing in the morning or at night?
Oh, I'm a night owl.
Night owl. Okay.
But I like morning better.
Yeah.
I think I'm more productive when I. But
you also teach and have faculty meeting and chapels and all that.
I think it started when the kids were little, and you just you didn't get any free time until 10,
That's right.
and they're to bed. And I just got in a bad habit of if you get emails from me, they might be 1:30 or 12:45 or I tend to do stuff at night, but either's fine. Yeah.
Conference presentation or journal article?
Journal article is the ultimate goal of the conference presentation.
Okay.
And so I like journal articles because they have the capacity to help people over a long period of time. But I get a real, I don't know, I love doing oral presentations.
Yeah.
And I especially like the ETS ones because so many of my former students show up. I mean, I looked out into the crowd. I did 2 on one day this 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And they were just, all my students were there.
Beautiful.
And somebody said to me, "You've got a lot of students out
Yeah,
here."
this one was presenting.
And I go, and they're
right here,
loyal.
so, yeah,
They're
yeah.
loyal.
Yeah.
And
As
so
they should be.
I get a big kick out of so I love both. It's hard they're different. I'd love to do the conference thing as a prelude to publishing.
Last question.
Okay.
Oxford comma, yes or no?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
like that.
That's all we need. I mean, you're in the club. Thank you, Dr. Chisholm.
All right.
Always
Thank
a pleasure.
you for having me. It was always a joy to sit down and talk about narrative literature with you and the
Always.
role of women
Thanks.
in the text and
All of that.
all of
Love
that.
it.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot
And
for
thanks
being
for
here.
what you do. Yeah,
Thank you.
you represent the school well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's kind. Thank you for joining us for the Chick Report. And thanks also to our wonderful producer, Talitha Summers, and our fabulous production manager, Kyle Walker. Till next time, remember, love is the one rule that rules them all.